Hello everyone, this is Doug Wilson. I am the president of the Community Foundation and you're watching the Community Foundation Spotlight on PAC 14, your public access channel in Salisbury, Maryland. And with us today we have Dave Wilson, an easy name for me to remember. Doug Wilson, Dave Wilson. And he is from the Maryland Coastal Bays. And welcome to the show.
Good to be here, Doug.
Well, I think the way I like to start things off is just if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, whether you're a native or not that that's important,
Yeah.
how you became involved in coastal bays, and what your position is there.
Yeah, sure. Well, it is important whether or not I'm a native. I'm actually not a native. My parents have owned property in Worcester County since I was just a little tyke, before I was born.
Yeah.
And so we started coming to Ocean City when I was a child. And I fell in love with the ocean and the bays, and I'm an avid fisherman. When I retire, I'm going to fish every second of every day I can. So, and so I love fishing. I love the outdoors. In the meantime, I came down here and worked in the summers. I went to college at Penn State University. Maybe some Penn State graduates out there. I went to graduate school at Boston College, and then came down here and was reading an ad on the beach one day in the Baltimore Sun and said, "Hey, I could do this job. You know, I love to do outreach," because I started out as outreach with the program. Now I'm the executive director of the program. Been there since 1997, which is a long time. We have a great staff over there. We have a staff of 10 people,
Yes.
about 6 part-time, and they do just great work.
That's lovely. Well, tell me a little bit about the program.
Well, the program is a national estuary program. We are a nonprofit, so we rely heavily on private donations, but we're also funded in part through the Clean Water Act. And so we are charged with creating a management plan and implementing a management plan for the coastal bays. And these are the bays behind Ocean City and Assateague. Very different from the Chesapeake, very shallow bays, very sensitive bays, but very rich biologically. And so we are charged with protecting those bays, and we work with our local, state, and federal partners. But we also work with the local communities. You know, we're not a regulatory agency, and so we work with people to get them to learn and to educate them, but also to help us do the things that we need in a way that's practical for them. And so that's what we're really well known for, is working with everybody, commercial, recreational fishermen, developers, farmers, just to reach sort of those common goals that we all want, and in a way that helps us all get there without too much trouble.
Great. I know that Coastal Bays does a lot of scientific type monitoring work and that kind of thing. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What do you monitor?
We monitor just about everything, Doug. Of course we do. Our main goal is to protect the coastal bays, and so water quality is our main issue. And so we monitor dissolved oxygen, total nitrogen, phosphorus, chlorophyll A, things that you would normally monitor when you're doing water quality things that we do. We also monitor for the ecosystem. We're really interested in ecosystem management, and that's how most systems are managed nowadays. You want to do it on an ecosystem level, and so we monitor for terrapins, we monitor for reptiles and amphibians with the state of Maryland. We have a really avid group that does our colonial nesting bird count, and so we count herons and egrets and black skimmers and royal terns on the very few islands that they nest on in the state of Maryland, which just happen to be in the coastal bays. And so we do that. We do horseshoe crab monitoring. Our horseshoe crabs are actually the same species, but a different group than breeds up in Delaware. And so really interested in their needs and do a lot of monitoring there. But I tell you, we really rely heavily on volunteers, and they do a great job. We train them, and we couldn't do all this work without them.
Yeah. You know, one of my good friends out in California is a wildlife biologist, and he works for the Bureau of Land Management. And he would always tell me that one of the things that he hated worst of all was fish counts, where they would go out in these lakes or streams or whatever, lie down, and they would stick something in the water and shock the water.
That's right.
And the fish would rise to the top, and they'd count them. Meantime, they'd be getting eaten alive by every imaginable flying bug and insect. You know? It's crazy.
That's right. Yeah, we actually, it's funny you mentioned fish, because the Department of Natural Resources has a really great data set from 1972 for the coastal bays. So we have really good data on flounder, weakfish, rockfish, of course, and we actually go out seining and trawling with them, but they are in charge of that. We just give them volunteers, and they go out and help out. And they have an excellent data set. And yes, once in a while we might accidentally bring a couple flounder home, you know.
Accidentally,
but they're all legal size. But we have a lot of fun doing that and getting the volunteers out there, especially students who love to do that stuff.
I know you produce a report card on the bays.
That's right.
Is that an annual thing?
Yep, sure is. Yeah.
Well, Fill us in. What's the latest from your report
Yeah,
card?
well, it's a mixed. You know,
it's a
every
mixed
year
bag.
we do it every year. It's really hard to judge the health of an estuary from year to year. You have to look
Right.
at it over the long term. The good news is our seagrasses have recovered from a blight in the 1930s, and our seagrass numbers have generally gotten higher every year up until about 2001, where we had some really warm weather and we had some foul weather, and it sort of put a lot of nutrients into the system. There was a lot of heat stress from the eelgrass that we have in there because they're at the southern end of their range. And as we've seen temperatures gradually rise, we're starting to see a lot of stress on those grasses. And so we've seen in the southern coastal bays some pretty big die-offs of our eelgrass. In some cases, 2005, we lost almost half of it.
And what is eelgrass good for?
Eelgrass is a really important grass that grows from root on the bottom, and it actually outcompetes algae. And so when you have algae, you have dissolved oxygen problems because the algae grows, it dies, and it steals oxygen from the water. Seagrasses are really important because they are very important for the health of the water, but they also provide tremendous cover for juvenile crabs, juvenile fish, drum, a whole host of species which really rely on that cover to survive their youth.
Okay. Anything else you want to fill us in from your report card?
Yeah, well, the bottom line is that the northern coastal bays have always been in much poorer condition than the southern coastal bays. And we think of north-south, we think of the Route 50 bridge or the inlet. South of there, we think of as the southern bays, and north of there, we think of as the northern bays. And Sinapatuxet, Newport, and Chincoteague Bay are the southern bays. And they've had some issues over the years where we think we're seeing some old groundwater inputs finally reaching the coastal bays, even though we've done tremendous amount of work with farmers down there to put in buffers, to put in water control structures, to do land conservation. We've seen a decline in Chincoteague Bay, which is pretty steep, and we're really concerned because that was always our bay that was in really great condition.
Yeah.
The northern coastal bays have had a lot of abuse over the years from a whole host of sources, but we've actually seen some improvement in the northern coastal bays over the past decade or so,
Right.
and we'd like to see that continue. So that's the good news, bad news kind of scenario.
Okay. You know, I think you touched on it a bit when you said you work with local farmers and others to put up berms or do whatever it is they need to do.
Yeah.
So you do restoration work, you do work to try and support and improve the coastal bays. Can you tell what kind of projects do you have going on?
Boy, we have a lot of, some of my favorite projects are the ones that move dirt and protect land. And so even though I rarely get away from my desk, we have a number of projects where we're doing land restoration or in some cases island restoration. Skimmer Island is one of our biggest projects where we restored an island just north of the Route 50 bridge. You can see it if you drive over the Route 50 bridge, which was originally the home for endangered black skimmers and royal terns. It's decreased in size more than 50% over the past decade or so.
Wow.
And so we're doing restoration work there by using dredge spoil from one of the local marinas and putting it right out there on the island, which is great for everybody. They save about $150,000 a year by not having to truck it out to Berlin, and we get the really good sand that we need to help these birds survive. And so that's been a really great project for us, and we're going to continue to try to do that. We have a lot of other programs that deal with restoration on land, on shore, on the mainland. And we have some great wetlands projects and forest restoration projects on a bunch of sites that we own or manage in the northern coastal bays. We have a kayak launch that used to be Ocean City's old dump, which we converted to a great kayak launch.
Yeah.
We have a 430-acre property that the county owns that we're restoring with wetlands and removing some of the pine and putting some more native hardwoods in there. And so we're doing some really great work, and we have great, again, volunteers who are out there helping us to manage these properties because we can't do it with 10 staff. And so our volunteers have been tremendous with some of these projects that we're doing.
That's great. Well, this time I just want to remind our viewers that you're watching Community Foundation Spotlight. I'm Doug Wilson, President of the Community Foundation. I'm here with Dave Wilson, who is the Executive Director of Maryland Coastal Bays. And he's been explaining to us about all the great programming that they do and how they're watching out for the health of the bays and really protecting our interests and those of the economic climate as well of the shore as well. I would think, correct?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think Ocean City has been really good to us. The town of Ocean City has been very generous with us. The restaurant owners, business owners have been very good to the Coastal Bays program.
Correct.
And I think that's because they know that, their businesses, the health of their businesses is very reliant on the health of the coastal bays. And so, the more we can do to protect the water quality, protect wildlife, the better shape they'll be in to basically keep themselves running and in business, because we have good water quality. That's why people come here. They love the beach just like me, and they love fishing, they love the bay. So
That's right. You
So
know,
we
that's
do
a
that,
great
yeah.
segue to another question. What can an individual person do to help protect the bays?
Well, there's actually a lot they can do. We work closely with individuals, do a lot of education programs. We have really a full-time marketing person, we have an education person, we have a really great web presence on Facebook and other places. And we have a homeowner's guide to the coastal bays, which we distribute
Really, a homeowner's
by
guide.
the thousands every
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
And it tells you pretty much everything you can do to protect the coastal bays. If you live in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, we'll still give you one. But the Chesapeake Bay watershed is about 113 west.
Yeah.
East of 113 is roughly the coastal bays. And so a lot of those things are simple. A lot of them involve how you manage your lawn. We always promote native plants instead of lawns. Lawns really don't have much ecological value. They don't have much value from a water quality standpoint. But when you start planting native plants, it's much better for wildlife, much better for water quality, because plants hold the water, they keep it, they take it up before it goes into the coastal bays. And so that sort of issue is a big one for us. How you manage lawns. Impervious surface on your property. We generally say don't pave what you don't have to pave. Because just a little bit of impervious surface in any sub-watershed can bring a lot of water into ditches and into the coastal bays very fast, and that's generally pretty poor, very bad for water quality. We also work, again, I mentioned, with farmers and developers and landowners who want to do conservation work, and been able to really hook them up with some of the state and federal programs that really we're competing for on a national and state basis, and we'd rather bring that money here to the coastal bays and have it go to the western shore somewhere else. And so we do a lot of that work, and I think we're pretty good at it. So
Good. Your relationship's good with the farmers and the developers and everybody, or?
yeah, we actually have a Builders for the Bay book that we did a few years back, which actually was a kind of a win-win for both developers and for environmentalists. We managed to get thinner roads, less parking spaces, and so those are things that give us less impervious surface, but also save money for developers.
Yeah.
I think one of the things the farmers have appreciated the most is our work with Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Foundation to keep dollars in there and to lure dollars into the coastal bays. Worcester County also has really good agricultural zoning, much stronger than much of the rest of the shore, and so we've been able to retain a lot of our agricultural areas and community and really have higher land values, even though we have stricter zoning than most of the rest of the shore. And so that's kind of the way zoning works, and I think the farmers appreciate it.
I know you have a very interesting program, I think, with the National Aquarium in Baltimore around dolphins or something.
Yeah, we have a
that
seal
sounds exciting.
program.
A
Yeah,
seal program.
They actually
What the
approached
heck
us
is that?
3 years ago. We had every year we have seals in the coastal bays, and on any given year we think there's 30 to 60 or so.
Really? Is it a
around.
family pod or?
No, different seals.
It's different
Yeah,
seals?
yeah,
Okay.
Harp seals and harbor seals mostly.
Okay.
And the National Aquarium, wants people to be educated on how to treat these animals. You're not allowed to get close to them. You can really stress them out. Usually when they haul up on land, they're tired, they're exhausted, they've come a long way south. They need to rest. They don't need to be molested. They're actually quite aggressive too. And so if you walk up to some and you may think it's docile, you could get bitten, or your dog could get bitten. You should never let your animal approach a seal. And these animals just need to rest. And so we created this program where we ask people to tell us where there's a seal. They can go on our website and click on where they saw it, take a picture of it, show us a picture. We give all that data to the National Aquarium, and they put it in their database. So we kind of get a really much better idea on what species of seals are here, what they're doing, what are their patterns that we think because of climate change that we know that the Gulf Stream is slowing, and that we expect to have colder springs and actually a more of a cold draw from the north than we've had because of the slowing of the Gulf Stream due to the relatively warmer northern waters. And so we expect to see a lot more seals and have colder springs.
I was just going to ask you that. You expect more seals.
We do.
Yeah. Well, I think that's fascinating. They're just lovely to watch. How close can you approach if you see something on the beach?
Well, I think
because people are interested and fascinated.
I think
by
50
things.
yards is the legal limit from the Marine Mammal Protection Act.
Okay.
And so 50 yards is probably a safe distance. It's great with binoculars. You can get a real good look at them. But they don't. But again, for their safety and their health, we want to stay as far away as we can.
Stay as far away as possible. Absolutely great. Well, you must have a lot of volunteers.
We do. We have. I think on our report that we provide to the federal government, we have about 650, and we count them very closely. So every year we count about 650 volunteers. That now, not all those are active. Some of them are at cleanups and things like that. But,
right, but even so.
But we have about 120 volunteers who are regular active volunteers, which is a lot of folks. And one of the things we really need volunteers for and continue is for managing our properties that we manage. And so people can go online and sign up to manage a whole host of properties mostly in northern Worcester County, but some in the southern part of the county, in addition to all the monitoring that we do. And so that's a lot of fun for people. They just get to walk on trails and put up signs and just be outdoors, and we really love to get people outdoors as much as we can.
So the way if someone was interested in volunteering, they could go on your website.
That's right. Yeah.
And contact you in that regard, and then see
real
what
simple.
It is very simple.
Yeah.
What kind of projects you got coming up?
Oh boy, we have. I mentioned some of my favorites now is the Bishopville Dam Restoration Project. And that project will allow anadromous fish, these are fish that breed in fresh water but live in salt water, to go up.
Say that again.
They're anadromous.
Anadromous.
Yeah, so they'll be able to breed in fresh water, which they haven't been able to do for over 100 years because there's been a dam at Bishopville.
I see.
And so, nationwide, with people removing dams or altering dams to try to get these fish to allow these fish to breed again. And in our case, we're thinking about white perch, rockfish potentially. And so these are fish that probably bred up in the upper reaches of the Bishopville Prom. We can't do so anymore. And so we're not removing the dam, but we're creating a fish ladder there so they can actually get up with the American eels that also go up the dam. And they're catadromous, so they spend their childhood
in salt water and live in fresh water.
Right, that's exactly right. So they breed in the Sargasso Sea, but they spend their youth, most of their life in fresh water. Wow. And so these are species that need to get upstream in order to have that real nice estuarine sort of habitat to breed in with woods and things like that. So
lovely.
We're real excited about that project among a couple others. So.
Yeah. Tell us about one more project you got coming up.
Well, one of my favorites, I'd mentioned Skimmer, which is probably one of my best.
Yeah.
One of the things I'd love to talk about too is our events. We have some great events.
Tell me about your events.
Yeah. In October, we have our triathlon every October, the first Saturday in October, October 5th. And we always have about 500 racers down at Public Landing, which is a great little venue. It's a sprint triathlon, so it's a half-mile swim, 15-mile bike, and a 3-mile run. So it's a great course, and anyone who wants to volunteer, if you're not in good enough shape to race it, which I'm sure you are, come on, check it out, and we'll get you hooked up with some volunteer opportunities and a free lunch and all that good stuff.
That's great.
After that, we have the paddleboard races, or the poker paddle run, the weekend after that.
Poker
well, no, that's actually, the poker paddle run is, you go from bar to bar in Ocean City and you pick up a card. It's tough. It's a tough life. Yeah.
Tough job, yeah.
Yeah, you pick up a card, whoever has the best hand wins. And so that's a lot of fun. We have a lot of people kayaking and dressing up, and again, just to promote the coastal bays. And then, of course, June 2nd, we have our paddleboard races, and so that's a lot of fun. That's at Fagers Island, so that's a really good group that comes out for that.
Tell us how you fund yourself? Where do you get money from?
Well, as I mentioned, the town of Ocean City is really good to us.
Good.
Fagers Island and Secrets and others have been very generous over the years and given us a lot of money. Mackey's Bayside. Oh, yeah. Really, really generous. And so we have fundraisers at those locations. They give us dollars. We have a lot of very generous donors. We have a endowment at the Community Foundation.
Right.
That's over $600,000, and we were able to draw from that, which is really great. And that was, again, from a very generous donor who offered us $1 million in match. We raise about $250,000 a year in private dollars, and so
great.
That's where most of our dollars come from. We do have grants, additional grants, usually from anywhere $10,000 to $25,000, but we also help other entities get grants, and I think that's something that we've been good at with our state and federal partners. We help them get the big grants, the $500,000 grants, the $2 million grants that we may not necessarily want to manage, and we want them to do the work just so it's in our watershed. That's all that matters. So,
Well, I'm sure there are a lot of other projects and things that you would like to accomplish, but money kind of hand ties you a little bit. If someone were interested in supporting Maryland Coastal Bays, what would they do? How would they do it?
Well, all they have to do is go online. They just click on our website.
Which is?
On donate, mdcoastalbays.org. www.mdcoastalbays.org.
And
they can click on donate, and they'll be able to donate quite easily. And any little bit helps. $10, $20, $30. Those
goes
are
a
all
long
great.
way.
They really do go a long way. Help us employ the people we need to employ, and And again, we leverage about $18 for every dollar we get from Clean Water Act money. And so we're really proud to say that
Oh, that's lovely.
for every dollar that the taxpayers give us, we earn another $18 to go to the coastal bays, and that's real important to us.
So for our viewers, you can go on www.coastalbaysmd.org.
mdcoastalbays.org.
Oh, mdcoastalbays.org.
Yep. MD is in Maryland. Yep.
Right. Or you can call
Yep.
Maryland Coastal Bays at
410-213-BAYS. That's 2297.
2297.
Yeah.
Great. Any last comments or things you'd like to suggest or say to our viewers before we sign off?
Well, I would just say get outdoors. It's spring. We can't protect the things we don't love unless we actually know that we love them. So get outdoors and go kayaking, running, biking. Just get out and enjoy yourself.
All right, let me ask you one quick thing before we sign off.
Yeah.
When are the cicadas coming? Do you know?
I think the ground temperature needs to be in the low 60s, and so we expect them to be climbing out here in a couple weeks. Be great for wildlife. Yeah, the wildlife should love it. Lots of food. Lots of food.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, anyway, this is Doug Wilson. On behalf of Dave Wilson from Maryland Coastal Bays, we'd like to thank you for tuning in today and hope to see you again on another short program. This is Doug Wilson from the Community Foundation. You've been watching Community Foundation Spotlight. Thanks, Dave.
All right. Thank you, Doug.
Would you like to see your community organization or nonprofit group featured on PAC 14? To get started, contact us at 410-677-5014 or visit our website at www.pac14.org. PAC 14 is a great way to connect with your community.